evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Morgan, and I would like to thank you for tuning in to EDU 111.1. Tonight, we have a very special Christmas Eve broadcast, bringing you a lovely rendition of Jingle Bells and even a special... I'm sorry, but we need to bring you breaking news from our field reporter, Hannah.
Thank you, Ryan. Field reporter Hannah here. In the wake of Brown versus Board of Education of 1954, in which the Supreme Court declared segregation unconstitutional, change is beginning to occur despite internal opposition. Here at EDU 111.1, we have discussed the 10.7 million children, nearly 40% of our public school students, who have been affected by this decision. But we have not discussed the teachers who have been affected greatly in detail. Attitudes from both black and white prominent Southern teachers were often negative, and many concluded that desegregation efforts caused more harm than good. For example, black teachers were often assigned to subjects in our grades that were not in their area of expertise during the desegregation process. These teachers were then subject to failing evaluations and unjust termination. The results of desegregation 10 years after the Brown versus Board decision found that 90% of black students were still enrolled in all black schools. This slow progress was incredibly discouraging to the teachers who put everything on the line to do what was right. In recent years, things are finally beginning to change. Thanks to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that was just passed, the Department of Justice can finally take legal action against schools who are not complying to desegregation implementations. This, combined with the Voting Civil Rights Act, is further strengthening the movement. Though there is still much opposition in certain unlikely areas of the country, idealism about education is flourishing. Schools such as West Charlotte High School in North Carolina have implemented workshops for the cooperation of both black and white teachers. Eunice Farr remembers the bonding fondly when I last interviewed her. She stated, "As the students came in, I noticed the faculty helped the students to bond. I get chills just thinking about the situation. It was so exciting to me." Our next interview concerning this topic is with Cleopatra Gorey of Woodlawn High in Alabama. Okay. Hello, Ms. Gorey. Thank you very much for your time today. It's encouraging to see the progress that is being made in the desegregation of schools. Could you please tell me about the current curriculum that you are implementing to aid in this endeavor?
Why, yes, thank you. It has been a pleasure to be here today. We certainly have come a long way since 1954, when the Brown versus Board decision was made. Now the curriculum is around the African American experience, where my students learn lessons from a unique perspective concerning the Middle Passage, Revolutionary War, and Reconstruction.
That is inspiring, and it seems past due for our school systems. How do you think the integration implementations have been affecting the relationships of your students?
From what I can see in my classroom, these actions have brought us closer together, black and white. I learned to love the students. I learned them just like my black students, and we became endeared to each other.
This progress is quite encouraging for our future school systems. Thank you very much for your time. Even though integration reform faces much opposition, as we can see from educators such as Farr and Gorey, there is hope for the future. We may have far to go, but we are on the right road. Now, back to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Hannah, for that interesting report. Now, we would like to take a moment and bring you some Christmas cheer. So, take time to relax and enjoy the dynamic duo of Molly and Tyler. We would like to present Jingle Bells.
All right, y'all sing along. You don't know this, you're not American.
Wonderful. Let's have a big round of applause for Molly and Tyler. Now, as I tried to mention at the beginning of the broadcast, we have an interview with a very special guest. Our DJ, Lil Mancy, will now present to you her interview with President Lyndon B. Johnson, discussing his views on education.
Welcome, President Johnson. We appreciate you being on EDU 111.1 this Christmas Eve.
Thank you, Little Mancy. I'm excited to be here.
So let's get started. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background, specifically concerning education?
Yes, I grew up in Stonewall, Texas, and went to a Run Room Junction school. Unlike others I knew, I went on to graduate high school, and even though I said I never would, 3 years after graduation, I went to Southwest Texas State Teachers College, but I dropped out before getting a degree.
Oh, really? Why did you drop out?
I went to teach grades 5 through 7 at Wellhausen School in a small town in Texas. The students there were children of Mexican-American workers that lived in the area. The conditions were appalling. They had no extracurricular activities, lunchtime, or athletic equipment. I even wrote to my mother to ask for 250 tubes of toothpaste.
Wow, toothpaste. Now for a commercial break. This interview was brought to you by Education Connection.
Get connected for free with Education Connection.
Yeah.
Get connected
Hey.
for free with Education Connection.
Is that how much I know that commercial?
And we're back with President LBG talking about education. Now, Mr. President, you mentioned the bad conditions of the schools you worked at. Tell us, what action did you take to improve the school?
Once I became principal of the school, I became a leader and a role model for the students. I started and starred in the new school paper, and I led a debate team. But all I knew was to teach them the little that I knew, hoping that it might help them against the hardships that lay ahead. Somehow you never forget what poverty and hatred can do when you see its scars on the hopeful face of a young child.
That's pretty intense stuff. Thank you for your transparency. Was it these experiences that led you to sign the Elementary and Secondary Education Act?
That would be correct, Will Manson. I signed the act beside my first school teacher on the lawn of Junction Elementary.
That's great, Mr. President. Can you give us some details on the ESEA?
I'd be glad to. It was actually the first act from Washington to provide aid for disadvantaged students. This bill is focused on closing the academic gap between low and high income families. It is important to us that the less privileged students can read, write, and do algebra just as well as those that are privileged. Title I of the Act provides the funding for low-income schools, and Title II supports preschool programs and libraries containing a breadth of textbooks for students to use. I believe in this Act and truly hope that it will fulfill its purpose.
Just beautiful, Mr. President, just beautiful. Well, it looks like we are out of time, sir. It's been a pleasure to speak to you on EDU 111.1 today. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure, Little Nancy. Plus, lit like a Christmas tree, and a Merry Christmas to all the listeners out there.
Well, folks, you heard it here first. And sadly, that seems like all the time we have for tonight. But remember to take time and be thankful this Christmas. Have a lovely day tomorrow, and Merry Christmas, everyone. Good night.